Well, hey, Vision. It's great to see it. Vision this morning. We're running our Facebook Live this hour. Do something different today. So I did want to take a second and say hey to some people watching on Facebook Live. First of all, Mandy Salmons. She had surgery on Monday and is coming through that thing cancer-free. So we're excited about that. Yes, thank God for that. Kim Thorpe, I know you've been out for a while with back surgery. We are praying for your recovery still. I know we got people out of state, out of the country. And I also want to say hey to Mitch Lewis and his family. He's usually up here. I think Mitch is watching on the beach this morning. So, Mitch, we are all really jealous. Okay? Get some sand for us. Bring it back. Hey, anybody going to the beach this summer? Anybody going to go? We're going in a couple weeks, I think. I'm looking forward to it. Yes. Hey, is everybody excited about summer? It's summertime? Okay. I'm excited about summer. Yes, I see that hand. And I love the longer days, the warmer weather, the kids out of school, spending family time. It's a great time of the year. And Vision definitely doesn't, we slow down a little bit, but we don't shut down. We got all kind of things going on this summer, from pool parties to volunteer celebrations to camp. God is just growing us and stretching us, and I love it. Now, we're continuing our series called Average Joe. Had a big start last week. In fact, we had our biggest Sunday ever as a church. We cracked through a new size barrier. We had, let me tell you about first-time guests. Normally, we get 3-4 first-time guests a week. The last month or so, we've averaged 8 to 10 a week. Last Sunday, we had 15. 15 first-time guest households. God is just like bringing people in, saying, check this out. And it is so cool that, honestly, people like Matthew and Ray and Kelsey that were not even thinking about God are now thinking about Him and walking with Him. I love it. I love it. So this story about this guy Joe, this average Joe, I love that we can look at the Bible and we don't see these perfect people. We see guys that are messed up, women that are messed up. And God takes them and works within their story to show how great He is. So this guy Joe, we started last week talking about how his dreams were dashed. And this week I heard from a bunch of you saying, Matt, that's where I am, or that's where I was, and I need help getting past that. And this week, today we're talking about the cost of having character. Of literally in our lives, would we be people that have character, have integrity? And in our society, that could be a vague term sometimes, like a moving target. Let me give you my definition, because I try to simplify things here. I don't want it to be complicated. To me, character or integrity, it's doing the right thing even when nobody's looking. I mean, it's plain and simple. Like there is a right thing, a right way to do things. Are you going to do that even when no one's looking? In church, in Christianity, though, we take it a little step further and say, we're measuring our right thing or our wise thing by Jesus Christ. That when that choice comes up, that opportunity, that pathway, you are faced with making a decision. Are you going to be a man or woman of character, of Jesus-type character, even when no one is looking? What are you going to do? How are you going to decide? And let me promise you this. If you want to, like the series says, if you want to experience God in an extraordinary way, if you're living outside of godly character, you're not going to get it. Okay? I'm not going to try to convince you. I'm just going to say flatly, if you want to experience God's power in your life, you got to live your life with character that pleases Him. It doesn't mean you're perfect. God is not looking at you saying, okay, you're not perfect, I'm not going to use you. He's saying, are you willing? Are you willing to walk with me and be used by me to do things that are not just average, not just ordinary, but extraordinary? And for me, for my life, I want that. So this guy Joseph, remember his story is early in the Bible. It's in Genesis. Last week we started in chapter 37. I'm inviting you to read with me from there to the end of the book of Genesis over the series. 13, 14 chapters. It's not hard, but as you read it, God will speak to you through this guy. And today we're in chapter 39. We're talking about this cost of having character, of will you stand up when temptation comes your way and say, wait a second, I'm not going to give in to that. I'm not going to submit to that temptation, but I'm going to go after this God's way with Christian character. So let's talk about temptation for a minute and how, honestly, we're all tempted by different things. For a lot of us, money is one that tempts us. And if you're honest, you say, yeah, man, I mean, it does. It kind of glimmers. It kind of gets in my eye, especially if I get a little taste of money. I want a little more money. I want a lot more money. Sometimes in life, temptation comes your way and says, okay, well, take it under the table. Hey, cheat on your taxes. Hey, kind of cut a corner in your business to make a little bit extra. for more money or more power. You say, man, I want power. When I grew up, I didn't have any power. I didn't have any authority. Now I want it. I want to move up the org chart. I want to have people look at me and respect me by the job I have or the life I'm living. I want power. And when power comes your way, you get tempted to go after it. Or maybe it's sexual temptation. And you're being tempted to do something outside of your marriage. Or you're doing something, you're being tempted as a single person. You're being tempted with sexual temptation. Or men, if we're being honest here, we're saying maybe it's more in our mind. Maybe temptation is coming your way saying, hey, look at this. Hey, lust after that. Hey, want that, or have an emotional type connection with somebody you're not married to. And Satan, our enemy, will come after you with that temptation. Maybe it's a temptation the way you treat people. You say, I'm just kind of selfish. You know, I don't really need to care for people because I look out for number one. That's just who I am. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to give in to the temptation of being selfish or cocky or arrogant when God can break you and change you. Or how about the temptation of even having a temper? You know, Ray, who was up here, we heard his story about, well, I was just mad a lot. I just had a temper. That's just who I was. It doesn't have to be. And if you've been down this path before where your temper has taken you places that you didn't want to go, and you want to go back to that moment of temptation with your temper, you say, yeah, man, I want to be able to do better than that. Well, we're going to help you with that today in the life of Joseph. So let's take a look in Genesis 39. We're going to go through this story, learn some things, have some fun with it, and honestly, you're also going to catch a glimpse of God doing extraordinary things in our church that he wants to do in your life. Starts off in verse 1. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. And if you remember last week, you know, this guy Joseph, he had dreams, he had plans. He thought, wow, God's going to use me. He showed me these dreams, and they kind of got dashed, they got crushed. And part of it, I believe, was an issue in him, cockiness, arrogance. He's naive, and he didn't really kind of work the thing the way God wanted him to. And he ends up being carted away to go be a slave in a faraway land. So it says, Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. So at this point in his story, we're talking, this is a low, low point. And you're like, man, it's the Bible, it's old. It wasn't that bad, was it? Okay, let's imagine that Josh gets loaded up and taken out of this city, this country, to a faraway land where he's going to be enslaved the rest of his life. We'll never see him again. You're like, oh man, that's really bad. That is terrible. That's where we're at in verse 1. But look how things change. Picking up verse 2 says, the Lord was with Joseph. And make sure you understand, when you feel like your dreams are dashed, when they're like ashes, having God with you trumps anything on that side. It does. Trust me in that. The Lord is with Joseph so that he prospered. Okay, anybody here want to prosper? I'm like, really, you want to have a life that prospers? You want a life that people say, man, that person is blessed. There's something in their life that is going right. Now, make sure you understand, this isn't just about money. You're saying, hey, Pastor Matt's preaching prosperity gospel. Yes and no. Yes, because, hey, why are we going to preach like the negative, bankrupt, hurting gospel? I want to preach the gospel that God's preaching. He's saying Joseph was prosperous. But what I'm not saying is that you walk with God, you're going to be rich. You walk with God, you're going to be popular and famous. That's not it. But in Joseph's situation, it says in the Bible that he prospered. And he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything his own. Okay, anybody been watching the NBA Finals? Okay, I'm a big basketball fan. I've been staying up with my boys, watching the finals. Okay, Golden State was up 3-0. Now, Cleveland's cut it to 3-1. If they come back and win the whole series, that'd be the first time an NBA team ever comes back from 3-0 in the playoffs. Would that be a big comeback? Yes, that'd be a huge comeback. This comeback's bigger. This comeback from verse 1, remember, he was carted away to be a slave in a faraway country. No hope, no dreams. Verse 4, it's saying that my man here is like the vice president of Potiphar Industries. Like the whole property, he's number 2. He has gone from the pits up to this place of position and prosperity and success in 3 verses. That does not happen naturally. The framework of our series is the ordinary going through the extraordinary. That's what's happening here in Joseph's life. Continues in verse 5. It says, from the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he didn't concern himself with anything except the food he ate. I'm amazed again that a slave has moved up to this position of authority, success, prosperity, only because of the power of God. Now, okay, men, I need your help. So if you're a man, a boy, teenage boy, all the guys in here, every male in the room, stand up. Every male in the room, stand up. Okay, I need your help here. Now, guys, this next verse, it says that Joseph was well-built and handsome. Well-built and handsome. So I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, so I'm seeing who in here is well-built and handsome. And there we go. I saw a hand. Look, see, the first service, there was only one guy who did that. Look at that. 2 guys waving. Say, hey, I'm well-built and handsome. I like that. Zach? Ron? Yes. Now, okay, so guys, I want you to be part of an experiment. Ladies, I need you to look at the guys. And in fact, make eye contact. Every lady, make eye contact with some guy. Look at that guy, and say, well built. Okay, stay with me. Men, stay standing. All right, I need you looking at now the guys. Look at them now and say, handsome. Okay, and then ladies, I need you looking them in the eye and say, ooh. I need to hear it. Come on, ladies, I need to hear it. Ooh. Okay, so all the guys, look here. I know we're laughing about this, but in the right setting, when a lady looks you in the eyes, and I'm not talking about your wife, I'm talking about a different lady, looks you in the eyes and goes, well built, handsome, ooh. You laughing right now, but in that moment, something is sparked. Temptation is sparked. So guys, go ahead and take a seat. Because Joseph, as a single guy who evidently was handsome, well built, I think the girl said, ooh. He was in this job, working for his boss, running the household, running the property. And temptation comes his way. Look at this. In verse 7, it says, after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, come to bed with me. Look at this progression. I believe it is well-built, handsome. Ooh, come to bed with me. Now you're looking at me saying, Matt, I mean, how tempting could she be? Hey, the guy's name was Potiphar. Take a look at his wife. We're going to call her Potiphar, okay? Okay, we're going to call her Potiphar. Now, Potiphar, I believe, was that like original Desperate Housewife who would look at Michael and say, well built, sweetie. Handsome, sugar. Ooh, come to bed with me. And right now we're laughing, but as a man, I'm telling you, that does something to you. That does something to you that Satan, our enemy, jumps on. And he messes with your thinking and says, try. Take a step. Go for that. You deserve that. You're well-built and handsome. You should just try that. And Joseph in that moment, I believe he had no idea what hung in the balance. If you remember last week, and if you know Joseph's story, he was going to be used to save millions of lives. Literally, millions of people are going to be saved because of him. So think about this, Patrick. If I said sometime in your life, God's going to use you to save millions of people, and you're like, am I going to come up with a cure? Am I going to be a leader? Like, what am I going to do? So I can't tell you yet, but if you stay on track, God is going to use you to save millions of people. So Joseph in that moment had a crossroads. I don't even think he knew it. But if he went one way, those plans all changed. And if he went this way, God's way? He said, I can't do that. And that's where he was. So look, see what happened. Joseph, he refused. He said, with me in charge, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns has been entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master, he's withheld nothing from me except you, because you're his wife. So in this moment, don't miss this, because what happens next, to me, is on my top 10 list of moments or verses to remember, to take and literally to plant in your heart. And I'm not just talking to the guys. I'm talking to everybody in here, that when you face a tempting moment, and it's for power or money or your temper or your selfishness or sex and whatever it is, and it's in that moment, I'm asking you to remember what happens next. I'm asking our students to remember this. Remember when Pastor Matt said, this is on my top 10 list of important things. This is it. Look what he said. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? He replied and said, I will not do that. I could not do such a wicked thing and sin against God, because he had a vision. Now, here at our church, we got such a simple mission statement. We're about leading people to Christ and helping them live out God's vision for their life. Joseph got this. This was like Vision Campus in Egypt. He said, God's got a vision for my life. How could I do such a wicked thing? There is no way I'm doing that and sin against my God. I don't want to miss what he has for me. And for you, in that moment, when temptation comes your way, you got to remember that God wants to do something in you that is extraordinary, and it is based on your character. And when you deviate from that, you're losing what he's got planned for you. You do. So why does this matter? I mean, really, why? You're like, Matt, this is kind of extreme. I mean, really, it was just a moment. You know, he could have just said yes, and they went to bed, and maybe this affair went on for a couple days or a couple weeks until it'd get found out. And the master would say, you slept with my wife? I entrusted all I had to you, and you slept. You're going to prison. You're going away forever. And what's interesting, you'll see in a little bit, Joseph did go away to prison. But that wouldn't have been God's way. If Potiphar said, you're going to prison because of what you did, and God takes his hands off and said, you're going to prison because of what you did. I say, I want to see God work in powerful ways. I say, God is working in our church in powerful ways. If you need to get a glimpse of it and hear about it to reinforce in you that God is real and moving, let me tell you this. 8 days ago, we did Project Refreshment, where we had people go out and share water. The guy who headed up for us, Sean Jones, got his picture. Sean and Mike, Zach, we had 20 teams out there passing out water. And for Sean, I think Sean basically said, I want to see God work in an amazing way. I want to do that. So we did this project. We had some families come in and visit because of it. I love that. And Sunday afternoon, it was interesting. We got a phone call on our voicemail. And I listened to it this week and said, we need to hear this. Because a guy like Sean, who wanted to see God work in powerful ways, is walking on track with God. He's not perfect, but he's walking on track with God. Just like Joseph, just like you have a chance to walk on track with God. So take a listen to this voicemail. We took out the last name to protect the guy's privacy, but listen to this voicemail of a guy who called us last Sunday afternoon.
Yes, my name is Ryan. I actually work for Gaston Sheet Metal over in Gastonia. I was just wanting to call and say I really appreciate what y'all done yesterday. I was up on a roof for about 6-7 hours yesterday, and it was really hot. So, and as soon as I got down, the way I feel about it, God sent someone to me because I didn't have no money or any water or anything. And one of y'all's members was passing out waters, and they come to me and actually gave me one. So I just wanted to say I appreciate it so much, and thank you for doing that. And I think it's wonderful that you guys do that.
Don't you want to be used by God in amazing ways? We, of the teams that went out, we had one team that went downtown to Ford's Nursery. And I called Ryan Friday to ask him just kind of how this happened. The team that went downtown was one of the guys in our church and one of the students in our church. And when they came back in, it was funny because the student said, yeah, I got the waters, and I was running up and down downtown, passing them out. And I don't know if you remember, 8 days ago, it was hot. It was like southern Gastonia hot. And he was all red-faced and everything. I'm thinking, why did he go running all around downtown? All he had to do was stand outside of Ford's Nursery and pass out waters. This student got used by God to pass a water bottle to Ryan. And when I think about him, and I think about Sean, and I think about you, and say, don't miss out on God doing miracles. He wants to do that. So as Joseph's story continues, we pick up in verse 10. It says, though she, Potiphar, spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. What Joseph was doing, he was already living out what Paul was going to write to Timothy in the New Testament. When Paul said, flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Paul, God, speaking through Paul, was saying, when you have temptation, don't keep it real close and just be careful. He wasn't saying, just kind of dabble in it, but just know your limits. He was saying, flee. Saying, get away from the temptation. Make sure that your character drives you away from what is going to try to drive you away from me. That's what Paul wrote to Timothy. And I love this in 2 Chronicles. It says, for the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. God literally, he's looking for men and women, for teenagers, for kids that will say, I'll be a person of character. I will flee temptation when it comes my way because, God, I want you to look in there and see me and strengthen me and prosper me. That's what I want. And I love it because God, he says, pray that. Do that. Desire to be that kind of person who wants to catch my attention and be used by me. So see where the story goes. Verses 11 through 18, honestly, things don't go well. Joseph says, I'm not sleeping with you. And Potiphar says, okay. And another day comes. Joseph comes in the house. He's wearing a couple layers of clothing. He runs into Potiphar and is like, no. She says, sleep with me. He says, no. And she reaches at him and grabs like his cloak or his shirt, pulls it off, and he runs out. So when boss comes home, says, hey, honey, your number 2 guy, he tried to attack me. He tried to sleep with me. What are you going to do about that? Potiphar, understandably so, he's ticked off. He says, Joseph, I entrusted everything to you. How could you do this to me? You're going to prison. So you think about this. It's kind of the same result, but it's a different way of getting there because Joseph was walking with God to prison because there was a cost to him having character. We'll see what happens. But while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. That outweighs anything Potiphar or his brothers or anybody did to him. The Lord was with him in prison. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. And look at this. This is so strange what happens in prison. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison. And he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Guys, this does not happen. Okay, you're not going to go up to Gaston County Jail and see a prisoner who has ascended in leadership to be given authority, to be trusted. This doesn't happen. It's certainly not in this time frame. We see Joseph is seeing God work in miraculous ways again. This isn't chance. This isn't luck. This is the power of God in Joseph's life. And I'll make sure you understand, God wants to do the same thing in you. This is an average Joe. We are average people. God wants to work through us in supernatural ways. You say, it's so hard. How can I do this? 2 things I want you to think about. Number 1, temptation will come your way. How are you going to handle it? Temptation will come your way. It's going to happen. Now, if you've ever heard this verse, this phrase, God's not going to give me more than I can handle. God's not going to give you more than you can handle. I'm telling you, that's false. You will go through things in your life that are more than you can handle. And that is to teach you that God can handle it. That you'll face things that are way bigger than you can manage. You know, when your son has surgery after surgery after surgery, right, Sherry? You say, God, I can't handle this. You're right, you can't. But when temptation comes your way, God gives you a promise. He gives you a promise. In Corinthians, it says, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you're tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. So this concept, God won't give you more than you can handle, that's false. But this concept that God will not let you be tempted beyond what you can handle, that is true. God will give you a way out. God will give you a friend. God will give you a church family. God will give you a power that is bigger than yourself if you let Him. You say, Matt, it's so hard. When I get tempted, it's so hard. I'm single. I want to have sex. God says, wait. You say, Matt, I need more money. I got to do it under the table. I have to do that. God says, no, you don't. You say, Matt, look, my temper. I can't stop from being like that. Yes, you can with God helping you. Remember last week? I talked about when your dreams, they come ashes, and in the Bible it says that He'll take those ashes and truly turn them like into a crown. That you'll be like an oak of righteousness. This morning I was out walking in my neighborhood. I was praying for you guys. And I'm walking past one of my friends' houses. They have this huge tree. I don't know if it's an oak or not. I'm not good at stuff like that. But I see this big tree. It's like 50, 60 feet tall. And I walk past it. I say, God, that's like an oak of righteousness. That tree is not coming down. That tree is you when you say, God, I want help against temptation. Remember last week? We talked about that oak. We talked about standing on a rock. When you're in that pit, you're slipping and sliding, and you step out onto a rock, that God will be your rock. You say, Matt, okay, temptation's coming my way. How am I going to handle it? Stand on the rock, be an oak of righteousness. And the second thing is that true success in life, it comes from growing in character. It comes from growing in godly character. It doesn't come from self-help. It doesn't come from better knowledge, better talent, harder work. Those things are fine. It comes from growing in character. This godly character that is lined out for us, and God says, go after it. Pattern yourself after Jesus, and I will walk with you in power. You say, well, man, I'd love that, but how do I grow in character? Well, say, first of all, spend time with God. Spend time with Him. And you may say, okay, well, man, I don't even know God. Well, in a moment when I pray, you'll have a chance to know Him for the first time. Like Kelsey. I mean, did you get that this morning? Kelsey, on Mother's Day, came into the blue room and said, God did something in my life today. That could be you. You first spend time with God in accepting Him, but in your week, you spend time with Him. You get in the Bible. You say, where do I read? Say, you read in Genesis. You look on your takeaway card. Those verses I put on there are purposeful for you to read and to take these truths and to nail them down in your life so you can be an oak of righteousness. You spend time with God. You worship God during the week. I don't know if you're big in music, but for me, 10 of the best dollars I spend every month is on my Spotify account. That I got Spotify, and when I hear about a song or an artist or a band, and I dump them in there, so when I'm on the tractor, when I'm running, when I'm doing different things, I am filling my mind with songs that make me think about God. I spend time with God. You get in a small group. You serve with people. You hang out with people who will get you thinking about God. You'll grow in character. And the other way you grow in character is you go through situations that refine you. You say, man, that isn't fun. And no, it's not fun. But when you go through a situation and you let God refine you in your marriage, in your job, in your money, in your temptation, and you let God refine you, it brings you closer to him. And think about this. Joseph, when he went to the prison, he thought it was like the worst of times again. And I believe it drove him to his knees. This song we're going to sing at the end about coming to the altar, it's not just in a church. I believe Joseph in that prison, he got on his knees and said, God, this is my altar right now. I need you. Daniel in the Old Testament, when they told him, you can't worship God anymore. You can't pray to God anymore. He said, I'm not listening to you. I'm going to my knees. I'm going to the altar. Jesus, the night before he died, in the garden, with the immensity of pressure on him, he went to his knees and said, I'm going to go to the altar. So my encouragement to you is during your week, you go to the altar in your life, in your truck, in your home, at your job, and you spend time with God and let him refine you. And truly, you will see God work in extraordinary ways when your character is shaped like Christ.